Oh, howdy all, grab yourselves a beer. It is time for some Path of Exile discussion. Today I wanted to outline the favourite map system which was added in the Delirium League, so about 3 months before this video is coming out, and give a couple of tips and tricks to using it. So firstly I want to say that this is an endgame system. It's something that you don't have access to at all until you're starting to run tier 14, 15 and 16 maps. The way that you unlock it is that in each of the 8 octants, you can have 3 levels of completion for each map. So you'll see here that there is that I've completed the Colosseum map and I've completed the bonus objective, which is killing the boss of the corrupted rare version of the map, and also the awakening bonus, which means that I beat the map at tier 16 and at awakening level 7. Your first bite of the cherry for the favoured map system, which will unlock the first of these little symbols here, comes when you've completed every map in that octant. So for Haewark Hamlet, that includes Iceberg, which is only available as a tier 15 map. So there's no lower tier versions of Iceberg at the moment. So you will need to have done every single map here, including at least one tier 15 Iceberg map. Once you've done that, you will be able to bias your drops of maps towards any given map that's in Haewark Hamlet. Now, there's a couple of misconceptions about how this works, so I want to clear it up. Firstly, the game decides what tier of map you're going to be rewarded with a drop. So, for instance, it might decide firstly, alright, you're getting a tier 14. And then once it's decided that you've got a tier 14, it then checks on your atlas what all of the valid tier 14 maps are. And you'll see there's quite a lot of them. And by default, each of these valid map drops has 1 chance to drop. However, if you were to use the favoured map system, so here I've just put Bog as a favoured map once, I believe that this adds 10 chances for the map to drop. So instead of having 1 chance to drop as a Bog, it would be 11 chances. Now it's 21, and now it's 31. All the other maps that aren't amplified by the favoured map system would only have 1 chance to drop. And so that means that you would get 31 bog maps dropping for every single one peninsula map that dropped, if you set it up to this extent. Now it's 21, now it's 11, and now it's back to 1. However, you will not get more tier 14 maps overall. So these extra bog drops would come at the expense of some of your peninsula drops, at the expense of some of your academy drops. And the idea here is that you can find a map that either has a layout you particularly like, or that has divination cards that you want to target farm. And then once you're actually solidly in endgame, you can then target these maps over and over again. Now, my suggestion for using this early on is once you've completed every map in an octant, you'll see here that in Turn's End, I have got every map completed in this octant, but I have not yet got the awakening bonus on Wharf. Now I could trade for a Wharf and pick it up and just run it, but at the moment what I'm doing is I'm using the favoured map system to bias all of my tier 14 map drops towards getting a Wharf. Once I actually have a Wharf drop, fantastic, that's the end of that. I'm also doing the same thing in Glenac Cans with the Marshes map, and in Valdo's Rest with the Villa map, and until very, very, very recently, I was doing it with 2 maps in Valdo's Rest. I was running for Factory and for Villa. So I had one of my preferred maps targeting Factory and the other one targeting Villa. I then got lucky and had a Factory map drop, and so I completed that and then scrubbed Factory off the favoured map system because I don't really like that map at all. I'd rather it doesn't keep dropping, but I did just want to finish off all of the awakening bonuses in that area. And so that's my current setup. However, once you've decided that you're happy with the status of all of the maps that you own, so let's say, for instance, that you decide that even though you don't yet have a Wharf map, you just really don't care about it, then at that point, you can then say, okay, we'll drop the bias towards Wharf map drops. Now, let's talk about some of the maps in each octant that I think are the best choices. So firstly, we have Haewark Hamlet. Haewark Hamlet has the infamous Burial Chambers hiding around here. Burial Chambers is very popular because it's got a fairly solid layout. It's not an extraordinary layout, but it's a solid one. and it also has the divination card, the Doctor. It's also a map that's fairly full of monsters. So a number of maps have greater absolute monster count than others. The highest absolute monster count on the Atlas is the map Desert Spring. So that's down here in over in New Vestia. It has an enormous amount of monsters because it was already fairly chocked, and then they added a lot to the boss fight. However, that boss fight is a long and challenging fight, and because it takes so long, a lot of players skip it, which means that it doesn't have all that many monsters. Burial Chambers, though, has a very good balance with about 80% of the monsters that a full clear of Desert Spring will have, but also having an extraordinarily high value divination card. Now, the Doctor divination card is quite rare, but the fact that it can drop it is considerably more common than any other drop of comparable value in the game. So Burial Chambers is the best choice in the Haewark Hamlet area. Honourable mention goes to Estuary, but just because it's such a nice layout, but unfortunately it can't compete, and so the default strategy that I would recommend is going 1, 2, 3, all focus on getting more Burial Chamber drops. In Turn's End, we have Toxic Sewer, which is a very good map for some builds. We have City Square, which is a very good map for most others. Not because either of them drops particularly good divination cards, although they do have some okay ones, but mostly because they're just great layouts. There are also a couple of niche options. Summit drops the divination card, the Mountain, which is a common drop, and will give you a jewel, a traditional jewel, so Crimson, Viridian, or the other one, Cobalt. It will drop one of those with the rare Universal Critical Strike multiplier mod on it. So this will be a magic jewel that will have that quite rare mod already on it. These are extremely good in the Harvest League because you can deterministically turn them into amazing jewels. So that's something that's popular with for a fair number of people, and I wouldn't recommend against doing that. If you are looking for that jewel, then give Summit a thought. The other option is Relic Chambers, which has the divination card Aziron's Reward, which gives you a corrupted prismatic jewel unique. That is generally going to give you one of the powerful golem jewels, and those are quite rare, and particularly if you're a solo self-found player, it's the best way to get those jewels. So Relic Chambers is an option too. However, default to either Toxic Sewer or City Square, depending upon your preference. For Lex Proxima, we have, in the current league, I'm actually going to suggest something that I wouldn't normally, and that is Siege. The reason I suggest Siege is because it drops the divination card, the Lord of Celebration. The Lord of Celebration isn't a valuable divination card, it doesn't drop a particularly good item, but it is the easiest way to complete the challenge for the divination card challenge. That is one of the challenges that a lot of people are going to be trying to get in this league. So if you're in a trade league, then going and running Siege maps is really good because you can sell this divination card. Especially if you're selling a complete set of them, they're worth more than they should be given how common they are as a drop. So that's the first option you've got. However, in general purposes, I would suggest that you either go for Tower, which has the extraordinarily valuable divination card, the Nurse. 8 nurses is a Doctor, and I believe that the Nurse drops with 8 times the drop rate of the Doctor. The Tower is also a very densely packed map as well, so it's quite good, and it works well with the Delirium Mirror if you happen to get it. Just due to the layout of the Tower map, the Delirium Mirror is very good on it. Additionally, you could consider one of the extraordinarily open layouts. So we have Jungle Valley, we have Fields, we have Arid Lake, we have Glacier, and we have Ashen Wood, which are all very open layouts and very popular for that reason. And additionally, we have Haunted Mansion, which is, of all of the maps that have close to the maximum number of monsters that you can get, Haunted Mansion has the probably most condensed, most compact layout. So there's a lot of good options in Lex Proxima, and really it's just going to come down to your own personal preferences. Alexajoris, Port is the most popular choice here because of its divination cards and its layout, which is very linear. I personally loathe this map, so I am not going to run Port as a 3 times favourite map or anything close to it, but Port is definitely one that I can't advise against it. I just hate it because there's so much running involved in it. Malformation is another good choice. Malformation and Port actually both work very well with the Delirium Mirror as well. Now, with Delirium in the current state of the game, the Delirium Mirror rarely appears in maps, but when it does, it's very, very impactful. And the further that you have to run through the map, the more impact the Delirium Mirror will have, the more loot that it can potentially give you. And both of these maps are exceptionally good for the Delirium Mirror, and really, I can't fault people that choose Port, I just don't like the map. Malformation, though, is good for the same reasons, and I just don't dislike it. So pick one of those. Over in New Vestia, we have 2 choices. The first one is Alleyways, and this is the default choice that most people make. Alleyways is because it has the Saint's Treasure Divination card, set of 10 gives you 2 Exalted Orbs, obviously a very high demand Divination card, and it's just not that rare either. So Alleyways is a very popular choice. One off the meta choice that I will defend is Basilica. Basilica is a very compact map with a lot of monsters in it. It also has a boss that you probably want to skip because he takes ages. Conley the Unrepentant is the map version of the boss Innocence from Act 5, and he has 4 intermission phases. Well, 4 or 5 depending on... No, 4, sorry. 4 intermission phases, 3 of which you have to fight monsters, and 1 in which he just stands there and does nothing while he transforms. This means that this boss fight takes forever. So, broadly speaking, if you're going to run Basilica, skip the boss. But when you're running the map itself, it's very quick to find both the seed cache, which is extremely important, and also just to kill most of the monsters in the zone. You can do that very quickly. So I wouldn't fault anyone for picking Basilica, but I think that Alleyways is the right choice. In Glenark Cans, there's a number to choose between. I'm very partial to Beach for the layout. Beach has a very, very, very simplistic layout, very easy map, and has an easy boss, but it's also one that you can quickly find every point of interest on the map. So if the map has events like a breach or an Elva mission or something like that, they're all very obvious because the width of the map is not particularly large. So for all the open ones, I think Beach has one of the very best layouts. Marshes, I want to point out, is a bit of a trap. Now, I do have Marshes favorited just because I want to get it out of the way. I haven't been able to get it to drop. But the reason Marshes is a trap, it has a very similar sort of setup to Beach, but it just has less monsters, and it also is easy to get lost at a couple of turning points in the map. It's an unpredictable layout, and so for that reason, I don't recommend doing this, even though superficially, it looks very similar to Beach. Shore, however. Shore is an excellent alternative, and really a lot of this comes down to whether you want to be impacting the drops of your other tier 14s or your other tier 15s. So if you choose Shore, you're going to nerf the drop rates of all your other tier 15s, including Burial Chambers up here in Haewark Hamlet. And so for that reason, I think that Beach is probably the superior choice there. But by all means, make your own decision. Coves is pretty good too, but unfortunately being tier 14, I think it just can't compete with how good Beach is. Okay, so next up we have... Oh, and the last one I want to point out in this area, sorry, is Park map. Tier 16. Park is a very compact map. It's a little bit more difficult to navigate than it seems at first glance, but it has a reasonably easy boss, and the boss isn't in an arena. It's also a very, very, very dense map. So it doesn't have all that many monsters, but the ones it has are very close to each other. So Park is pretty good, especially on builds that have less movement speed. Park is then a really good choice. In Veldo's Rest, I think that the best choice by far is Tropical Island. Everything that I said about how Malformation and Port over in Lexajoris have extraordinary interactions with the Delirium Mirror, This goes double for Tropical Island. Tropical Island is probably the best tier 14 on the entire Atlas, and this is all because of how well the length of this map works with the Delirium Mirror. When we get to Lyra Arthane, unfortunately, Lyra Arthane was an amazing octant in the previous incarnation of the Atlas of Worlds that we had in 3.9 and 3.10, and that was because it had Tower in it. Unfortunately, I don't think there's anything really all that good in Lyra Arthane. We have Gardens, which tends to have porcupines. We have Ancient City, which also often has porcupines, and even when it doesn't, is just a reasonably clunky map to navigate around. We have Crimson Temple, which is sort of okay, but doesn't have all that many monsters in it. I do believe it has a good divination card. I can't remember whether it's the one for Xerxes' Heart or the one for a Mirror Shard, but whatever it is, it's a very rare divination card. We have Arcade, which is pretty good, and if you're looking for another tier 16, then yeah, you can go for Arcade. I do think it's quite a bit worse than Alleyways, though. We then have Phantasmagoria, which is too much running around. It's got all the things I don't like about Port apply to Phantasmagoria. I'll have Armory, which is an okay choice. Again, I don't think it's fantastic, but it's fine. Belfry is like popular with some people. I don't like it. Too much running around, too many porcupines in my experience, and also the boss is even worse than the one in Basilica. I think if you compare Belfry to Basilica, in terms of overall compactness of the zone, overall distance that you need to run, and the boss, I think Basilica wins on all counts. We have Arachnid Tomb, which is just okay. Courthouse, which would be okay, except, oh my god, that boss hurts a lot, and is really dangerous with a lot of different map mods. I think Courthouse is probably up there with Vaal Temple in terms of the map bosses that deal the most damage on the entire Atlas. Courthouse is also, it has an okay divination card, but it's just not great. Primordial Pool is too sparsely populated. Defiled Cathedral is the same as Crimson Temple. It's sort of okay without being great. Channel is great until everyone in the league that wants their Tabula Rasa has it. And Overgrown Rune is pretty terrible. Oh, and there's Palace, which is actually terrible. So for that reason, Lyra Arthane, I'm partial to leaving it blank. If you like Belfry, if you don't agree with me and you like Belfry, then by all means, triple favourite Belfry. Likewise, if you think Armory is even better than I think it is, then triple it away. The last thing I want to point out is that it's probably best to spread out your favourites between tier 14, 15 and 16 maps. And so overall, I would suggest that for tier 16 maps, you triple favourite Alleyways, and that you also consider Park or Siege, or if you like Belfry, then by all means pick Belfry. They're the ones that I would suggest there. For tier 15, definitely go Burial Chambers, and you may decide that that's all you want to favourite. But if you want to favourite more at tier 15, Shore is a good choice as well. And for tier 14, definitely favourite Tropical Island, probably favourite Beach. Of course, you can't favourite Beach if you've already gone with Shore. And then consider some of City Square or any of the smooth layouts that are in Lex Proxima. Anyways, if you've got any comments or questions, definitely fire away below. Otherwise, I'm going to leave it there, and I hope you have a good one.